Oh, and then all the crypto guys that have died in the last 2 weeks. That's interesting.
And we're live. I can't. I don't know if I know any of the crypto deaths.
We'll look it up after the show. I don't.
Alright.
It's kind of becoming like the Kennedy assassination. Like, is this real or just all coincidence? What was the suicide rate of these guys before it happened? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was always a high number. It's just some of the weird stuff I listen to. They like, can you believe that? And it's like, well, I've got to do some fact checking here because this sounds really exciting, which means it's probably not true. But boy, it's a good story.
I don't know. We watched that like Wall Street 2 Money Never Sleeps, and I was like angry at like one of their premises is like millionaires don't kill themselves. They don't care that they've created problems for the company they failed. They just like the money. Uh, but then there was that one guy, like I think maybe earlier this year, where it's I forget it was like for like oh, what's the soap company or whatever, Bed Bath and Beyond. That guy like killed himself after he
Oh
like
yeah, the guy that threw himself out of a building. Yeah,
yeah. It's like
out of
well
a
there's
60-story building, and then the report on the death was like, yeah, they found a mother and her child were walking, and they found this guy dead. It's like, I think you're downplaying that a little bit. They found pieces of this guy dead. He was a rock solid man, or he fell onto like a mattress. He still killed him just because of the shock, but it didn't.
says like well there's one so
Well, I mean, did he do that because he failed the company, or did he do that because he was going to be indicted and go to prison the rest of his life? That's where I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know because how many of those people actually get indicted and go to prison the rest of their life? It's like
Oh,
one
if you
guy.
steal enough money, you will. I mean, it's
Wow, the 2008 crisis was it like one guy who went to jail because he was a foreigner?
that. Yeah, well, yeah, the Chinese owned thing or the Chinese ran.
Well that's the same thing with this guy. He was also like a foreigner, so I don't know if that was a thing. Like when foreigners dupe their investors and lose millions of dollars, they kill themselves apparently.
Yeah, because if they do it in America, the only thing they know about American prisons is the series Oz, and they're like, well, maybe death is preferable to this. They don't realize, no, there's Club Fed. That's.
Are you recording?
I am recording now,
You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon,
and I'm Nathan.
and yeah, I finally got the shirt. We have the
Yes,
Verhoeven Effect T-shirt.
I
I
plan
got
to have
one.
one probably after Christmas.
Yeah. So yeah, they're available. It takes a while to get you, especially around Christmas time. But
Yeah.
so today, we have another very special episode. We have the 1996 movie Romeo plus Juliet.
Yes.
Which is I'm not sure if it's Romeo and Juliet, but like that's how it's written and like when you search out in text, you have to use the plus instead of the and.
Yeah,
I
because you get
mean,
the 1962 movie or whatever.
yeah. Yeah, if you use plus, you'll always get this one. If you use and, it'll probably be like, maybe you mean this one?
Oh.
um, released November 1st, 1996. Director Baz Luhrmann, who's very it's weird. Like he's Australian. He made some movie. His first movie is a movie called Strictly Ballroom, which was based on like kind of like a theater production he did. So he's kind of a theater guy. Um, but like I thought he was like way more of a pervasive director. But like in his 30 years of film, he's only made 6 movies.
Yeah.
So he hasn't made a lot. I thought he did things like Chicago or something like that. But I guess because of Moulin Rouge was like so big, I just assumed like he must be doing musicals now. But his latest movie was that Elvis movie, which just looks ridiculous. But I hear people like it. So
Yeah, I've heard it's actually really good.
um, cinematographer Donald McAlpine. He has a fun history. I think he did like Predator.
Okay.
He did a.
See that?
I'll have to look it up. Yeah, sometimes I forget to look up the cinematographer stuff, so I don't have it off the top of my mind. That's the reason we put it in there, because they're important in the movie, but they don't get quite the credit that everybody else does. Oh, he also shot Moulin Rouge. He did the Time Machine. Yeah, Romeo and Juliet.
Medicine Man. The Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah,
X-Men Wolverine.
Oh, The Edge. He did The Edge. Oh, yeah. He did Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger.
Okay. He did Ender's Game, too.
Yeah, so he kind of switches. He does like some kind of artsy stuff, and then kind of like just run-of-the-mill stuff, and then like action movies and comedy. So yeah, he's kind of all over the place. So, but yeah, I figure that's more kind of important to point that out here, because this movie is such a visual spectacle.
Yeah.
Written by Craig Pierce and Baz Luhrmann. I didn't look up Craig Pierce. Then of course, based on Shakespeare.
Yeah. For those who didn't know.
Which it's actually written, the whole title is William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet. So.
Yeah.
Of course, cast is Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, John Leguizamo, and a bunch of people you know.
Oh yeah, everyone you know. I forgot that Harold Perrineau was Mercutio in this.
Oh yeah.
I always think of him from Oz and The Matrix. I know he's done other stuff.
Yeah, I think like the last big thing he did was like the Lost series. Like I haven't seen him in a while, but he's been around. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Most
His daughter's acting too now. So
okay.
I forgot. I knew John Leguizamo was in this, but I forgot Claire Danes was the love interest.
Oh yeah. I mean, this definitely. I remember like around the time this came out, I was probably watching Beavis and Butthead all the time on MTV, and like this was like all over MTV.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Commercials, whatever they're doing. It was like, we're doing a side hustle here for Romeo and Juliet. Which like this, I don't know, kind of a hit worldwide, made like something like 140 million, but only made like 46 domestically. So I don't know. There's a weird thing with that where when you include the worldwide number, it's like, oh, it must be really successful. But it seems like, I don't know if the accounting's weird or sometimes they don't get the foreign rights, but like it seems that movie studios don't care unless the domestic box office was at like $300 million or something like that. So,
oh,
but I assume this was successful. So, not necessarily career defining for Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's had like lead roles before this, but this was kind of like definitely like a big lead role for him, because this is like right before he did Titanic, which was just set him on a different level.
Yeah. Yes, this was a 12-year-old Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, he's way older than that.
No, he was, but he just looked really young.
Yeah, he looks really young. Yeah. So Nathan, do you have any history of this movie? I never saw it in theaters. I think this is actually the first time I watched it front to back, but
let's see. What I watched this in on like a Blockbuster. I didn't watch it in theaters.
Yeah.
Because it seemed, let's see, 1996, I would have been like 20. And it seemed like a little too, Romeo and Juliet, I always liked Shakespeare work. It's not like my favorite. Like my favorite is like the King Lear or Macbeth. Like I really get into those and the way they're interpreted. Romeo and Juliet always seemed teenagery. And at the time I saw trailers for this, it's like, oh, this is just a teenager movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not interested. I'll pass. But then I watched it on video and I thought, oh, this is sort of interesting. I don't hate this, but it's very much in the genre of like, I grew up in the 90s. I was in high school, and it's very much a 90s film. Like it has that look, that semi-comic book color palette sometimes, and people are acting goofy, like guys are like, and it's like that was kind of a staple of the 90s where you don't really see that much anymore. I mean, you still have like goofy guys, but it's not the same. This seemed a little it's very produced,
Oh,
every
it's
scene. It's
absolutely over the top.
yeah. Which at the time it was like, that's kind of cool, but upon a second viewing of it, I'm like, it almost dates it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because it's a
That's
retelling of a story set in the Middle Ages to, modern day. It's called Verona Beach instead of the city of Verona.
yeah.
So it's basically, it reminds me of Florida or something. But with but everyone's speaking. Now, I do like it that they kept the Shakespearean dialogue.
Yeah.
That made it kind of cool, where these people had to like earnestly say this stuff, and based on the action that was going on, the way they wrote it and the way they scripted it, it's like, oh, I know what that means. I know what he's saying now, even though I don't wouldn't talk like that. I get it.
Yeah, well,
Um,
yeah, it's really funny because they just have a wide swath of people doing Shakespeare dialogue, which just comes off as weird a lot of the times. Where it's like, you have just some meathead doing Shakespeare, you have like a model doing Shakespeare,
yeah,
and then you have a Shakespearean actor doing Shakespeare,
yeah, and it kind of works in a
comedians
weird
doing
way.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, it does kind of work in a weird way.
Yeah, yeah, but it's also just weird. But yeah, that's the way. That's the way the. That's always the thing with like Shakespeare, which sometimes I'm off put by, where it's like that's a long way to go just to say that, and then sometimes it's like that's the coolest way you could say that. But you have like way more of a history with Shakespeare. Like I barely, I just like know the surface stuff. So, but you've like read like treatises or whatever about
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Shakespeare.
it's a way. It's there's a reason, like, they have like what they call Shakespearean actors. It's a way of interacting with the crowd and sending a message out, where it's not relying on a lot of cinematic techniques, which
Yeah.
is why it's kind of weird when you see the dialogue delivered like in camera. Like, it's like, oh, okay, why would these people talk this way? There's a reason, like, Hamlet would turn to the crowd and speak, like, just boom out this dialogue. It's like, oh, why are these things, they vex me so, and it's all that. It's like, that would make sense if you're just watching the guy act on stage. Like, he has to, there is no like internal monologue on stage. It's all got to go out. You got to know what they're thinking and why, and that's what Shakespeare was good at. And
But yeah, that's why like sometimes like especially with the British actors and the kind of the Shakespearean stuff, that why they're good at it is it's just full commitment to the bit.
yep.
Where you can see some stuff in here where it's like the person delivering the lines are confused by the lines, and so you are also confused and awkward for hearing it that way. Where like you get a British actor that's just, I guess so, man. They seem really confident about what they just said.
Yeah, I mean, because you got like your big hitter actors, like, let me look it up real quick. You got like, like the guy who plays, like Brian Dennehy plays the head of the Montagues, and Paul Sorvino is the head of the Capulets. Like, those are big American actors, but they're really good. Like, you can see, like, oh yeah, this guy's carrying it off, like he's talking this way.
Yeah.
But then you got like the guy, I don't know what his name is, the guy who plays Benvolio, which is like,
Yeah.
he's one of the troublemakers. He's Romeo's cousin or whatever. It's like sometimes when he's saying that dialogue, like when he's talking to Carol and Montague, he's like, I saw him the other day, and I forget how the dialogue went, but the guy looked confused while he was saying it.
Yes.
And then the two actors reacting to him also looked confused. It's like, is this done for humor? Because the guy, he's not like chewing the scene, but he's like, really, it's almost like there's someone behind him, like boxed out, like, say this. And so yeah, that was kind of weird, but I don't know if that was part of the youth vibe, if that was done deliberately, or if it's just like the director's like just doing a David Lynch. We'll fix it in editing. Just go. You never know how it is. Because they moved a lot of dialogue around in this from Shakespeare, and they eliminated and combined some characters. I know why they did it. I don't hate it,
Okay.
but it's like there is some.
They didn't like add anything new, but they just
No,
copy and pasted
the
stuff.
long speeches and the unrequited love and we'll be together in death, and like all that's original.
Okay.
It's just some of the stuff with I forget what struck me as different, because I wasn't really expecting that. But yeah, it's like the priest and the like some of his stuff was like compressed together. Um, the prince who was like in this was known as Captain Prince, but the guy who was maintaining order in the
Yeah.
feuding city, like he had much longer scenes of dialogue and that I remember. It's like they kind of compressed that into him giving speeches to a lot of people instead of just talking to one character on the side. So there was a little bit of that, but it's still pretty good.
So, so we have Act One. So I'm about to recount Romeo and Juliet in probably the weirdest way possible. So if you
Yeah.
don't know the story, I'm going to recount it for you.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with this, actually, if you're not, just stop listening to this right now and go to YouTube. Um, yeah, but yeah, no, go ahead.
So we have Act One. There's just like a TV set in a void.
Yep.
I don't know where this started, but this is like a constant thing. At least in the 80s and 90s, this was a thing. You just have a newscaster on a TV set in the void, which is probably very kind of like Twilight Zone-esque, I guess. But
Well, it kind of works here because they're just the voice of the narrator.
yeah.
Because this is how Romeo and Juliet starts. It's a narrator. Two feuding houses equal in whatever. I can't remember the dialogue, but yeah, it was like basically, yeah, you have a woman saying this like on an action news set.
Yeah, but she's delivering the dialogue like, and up at night, two houses feud.
Yeah,
It's great.
it is kind of cool.
Then we get like titles and headlines and images of unrest. So, this is probably, like when the LA riots, was that like 92 or something? Yeah, somewhere around
Yeah,
there,
it's seemed like stock footage from different disturbances.
and even though we had the newscaster set things up, we have a different narrator kind of sets the stage, and then we get like a credit sequence, but not the real actors. We get like, I can't remember what it says, but it's like somebody as like, like King Montague or something like that or whatever. I guess they're not kings here. They're supposed to be like mafiosos or whatever. So
Yeah, essentially in this universe, because yeah, they were like dukes or something in Romeo and Juliet, but in this universe, they're like legitimate businessmen slash mobsters.
yeah.
So it's like I don't know which kind of backs the other up. I don't. There's not. It's set in America or an America-like country. It's like in modern times, but it's also like there seems to be weird like truces called. It's like there is a police authority that's Captain Prince who is like regulating the fight, which means like in Romeo and Juliet, he was the son of the king of that land, but in Italy somewhere. But like in this, it's like, oh, it's a municipality, and these are just feuding criminal warlords of some kind that somehow when the Capulets and the Montagues start fighting, like massive citywide riots break out. But it's really only like three guys shooting guns at each other in the strangest way possible.
But then they have like credits where they have like what Tybalt as the Prince of Cats or something and stuff like
Yes.
that. Anyway, so they have like credit sequences for the characters, but they don't actually say like who's playing them. It's like a weird thing, but I don't know, it's fun, I guess. It's different. Here it's like you don't have to introduce every character. It's literally you just put them on screen and slap their title up. It's like this is who they are.
Yeah.
And you have the stuff where it's like you have shots of unrest, and then you have who's the Irish guy? I just completely forgot him.
Brian Dennehy.
Yeah, Brian Dennehy, like reaching for like an MP5 that says sword on it. It's like, give me my long sword, and his wife's like, no. And then we have some Montague punks are driving about town being hooligans. This was shot in Mexico, so there's also like I'd say there's some stuff, especially the action, where it's like, this kind of looks a lot like Desperado. It's like, okay, well, they're shot in the same place. So I don't know if they had any influence on each other. Like anytime like a movie's within a year of another movie, it's like hard to say like, oh, they stole it from them and then rushed it to production, because like that rarely happens. But it was it's very cheap to shoot in Mexico, because I think this movie cost like $14 million and it looks way bigger than $14 million. But also like just like the weird, like everything is so stylish. They have these cars, like they're just modded cars. They're modded to hell. I know there's a lot of stuff they have in here where they take like SUVs or trucks and then like chop them into convertibles, which look really cool.
Yeah.
Which I have not. I really haven't. I'm pretty sure if I look for them, I could find it, but like that didn't really become a thing in like car mod culture. So it's either really hard or just something they do in Mexico. I don't
It's really hard.
know.
If you ever look up videos about convertibles, have them put them up on jacks, and you see the massive reinforcement struts underneath them
Yeah.
that keep them from just folding up,
Yeah.
car becoming U-shaped because it has no roof, no structural support in it. And when you take a vehicle like, I don't know what the Montagues were driving, it was like basically an S10, and they just
Yeah.
cut the roof off of it and put a body on it. Like that's probably either a prop car that's towed around, or it's something like that is like it's actually another vehicle with just a body put over it that was
Yeah.
always a convertible. Because to make a car into a convertible, it's very difficult if it didn't come from the factory that way. Like you can do it, people have done it, but you got to put a lot of structural reinforcement under them.
And like there are some car badges on there, but I don't know if they're real car badges or custom badges or just something they put in for the movie, or like these are the Montague badges. I'm not sure if you've spotted anything like that or not.
I just saw Montague badges. Let me go to
Okay.
there's a website that only talks about car movies. Go ahead and recount Romeo and Juliet.
Well, we have Jamie Kennedy as one of the Montague punks, who, was a comedian, got famous around the time for doing Scream, and then did a lot of terrible C to B movies, comedies, and I don't know what he's doing now. One of his recent credits is like a Roe v. Wade movie where it's an it's like a pro-life movie that looks like a bunch of garbage.
Oh God, he's not doing the stuff like in what was the guy they made a movie about him, the terrible director that did like Plan 9 from Outer Space. Was that Ed Wood?
Yeah.
And remember, he like the Christians were funding movies for him to make.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It seems like he's being put. Well, I'm not sure how much. This is one of his Christian propaganda movies, but yeah, there seems to be a thing. But because I saw a thing on YouTube the other day where it's, the Legal Eagle lawyer channel like looked over some movie called God's Not Dead 3, which has like some legal stuff in it, and it's just and there's like people in it. It's like, wait, why is that guy here? It's like it's a paycheck for a Christian propaganda movie. So
Yeah, it's the last stop. Okay, the Montague truck is a Chevy C series.
Huh.
So it's basically a full-size Chevy from the early 90s.
Converted into a 4-seat convertible.
Converted into a 4-seat convertible. The Capulet blue hoodmobile is a Monte Carlo.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah. And trying to think of, oh yeah, the one that Romeo drives that basically has no windshield and no top. That is also a 1981 Monte Carlo. Now, if this was filmed in Mexico, these were probably Mexican cars.
Yeah.
So they could, those are made a little different. So.
So the Capulet boys show up, and so they're at the same gas station, and they quarrel for a bit. They show off their guns and make fools of each other. And here's where you see where like they have like Beretta 9mm, but they're like gold plated and a bunch of weird stuff on it, and it says Sword Series 9. So so it's like the just modernizing the interpretation where it's like, okay, they have swords, but they're guns. And you have
and then I will say the Berettas, they didn't just gold anodize them. They put like weird brass accents on the safety and the slide release and stuff. So it was actually some cool, like, if you really pay attention to the guns, it's like, yeah, they look nuts, but there was actually a little bit of thought into it. They weren't just monotone.
Well, Tybalt's gun has like a weird thing where they put like a what do you call that? A muzzle brake on it, but then it has like this extension where it's like there's nothing in between, and like it looks cool. But it's like, is that doing anything? But I don't know. A lot of this movie is like it looks cool, but like
Yeah, it's a prop.
Yeah. And I started listening to the audio commentary for this. Yeah, I didn't get to finish it, but like Baz Luhrmann at no point like talked about like all this cool stuff in the movie. Like that wasn't his like. I don't know like if he was like, but like that at least in the commentary he wasn't concerned with that stuff. So apparently they just had a great props department and production designer. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got John Leguizamo as Tybalt. He shows up to escalate the standoff. Yeah, there's the weird thing where Jamie Kennedy's like I bite my thumb at thee, and he like does this weird thing, and then everyone starts like about to shoot each other. It's like, do you bite your thumb at me? And then he's like, do you have my back? And it's like, I do not know if I bite my thumb at thee, but I did bite my thumb. It's like this weird dialogue, but
Yeah.
And that's a thing. I don't know if that's like just time, or it's like, no, biting your thumb was like flipping somebody off back in the day or something like that, or if it's just something Shakespeare came up with. I don't know. So then like Tybalt starts firing off his gun like stylishly. He has like one like on a hip holster and then one like shoulder holster, and he's like grabbing him at different ways and then just shoot him in like weird stances and stuff like that, which again doesn't make sense, but it looks cool. It's like it's like they took some John Woo stuff and just put a little like dancing flair to it. Which is his previous movie was a dance movie, so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But nobody's killing anyone. Like they just got to shoot each other's guns and scare each other. Jamie Kennedy's character is getting hit in the head by some old lady with her purse. She's just constantly hitting him with it. Oh yeah, this I have to say, like this, the editing on this movie is like there's like 3 cuts every second. This is a very highly edited movie.
That's another thing that kind of like 70s, huh? Or not 70s, 90s.
90s, yeah. This is definitely like MTV editing. And then the what's his name? What's the guy with the cousin with the B name? Like I don't know how to say his name. Benvolio like shows up, and that kind of like he's like kind of the like more respected and better gunfighter or whatever. So then things escalate a bit there, but then they start running off the other Montagues, and then Tybalt puts a scope on his gun. It's like, all right, yeah, what a great time to zero your handgun.
Yeah, scope it in.
Here, like I thought he shot the bald guy and killed him, but he's in the movie later on. So it's shooting people doesn't really mean anything in this movie. So. Except at the end. Well, I guess it does. It does kill people eventually. But here, it's just kind of like, people get slightly wounded, and it's okay.
Yeah, and in the play set in the time, it's basically a drunken sword fight.
Yeah,
where people are kind of swinging wide and sort of they're trying to be threatening, but not actually kill the other person because they're under some kind of mandate from the city, like. Yeah, any more of this stuff, and it's we're tired of it. It keeps going on, so that's what it was. So it's kind of like that with guns, like just shoot the sign so it flips around 20 times and don't actually. But even those bullets are going somewhere in a crowded city. But
yeah, it's like this. It's like the weirdest, and it's fun, but it's like a Looney Tunes gunfight mixed with John Woo, mixed with like. Shakespeare mixed with like a musical. So it's very interesting. It's especially at the time, I don't necessarily think people were making this movie, nor has really anybody made it since.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it's been done a bunch of different ways. Yeah. And with teenage suicide being like the nucleus that it swings around is probably like not a good time to like, let's get the kids thinking about this again. It's
Benvolio gets covered in gasoline, so Tybalt throws down a cigar and it lights up, but he's able to run away in time before like the gas station explodes or whatever. Apparently in that scene where he's like running away and jumping on the cars, apparently he ran the wrong way, and that was just like literally people that were just
he was running past. They're like, what are you doing?
And hopping on cars he wasn't supposed to. That's somebody's car. And then everyone was just there. Was like, what's going on? What's this gunfight? It's apparently Mexico, so it's like not that not that weird. Apparently,
Yeah,
so.
it's like, why isn't there more of it? I was being chopped up with a machete. What's wrong here?
We get more like quick shots of like Strife and cops and the Montagues and Capulets. Captain Prince shouts from a helicopter. He's got a megaphone as Tybalt and Benvolio like stop fighting. It's very dramatic. That just like it's just another scene. It doesn't mesh together, but because of the editing style, it doesn't really matter. You just like it's like this cool like even the way they surrender is cool. It's like cool and stylish.
Yeah.
But then Captain Prince brings them and like they're arrested, and they bring like I don't know the Montague and
Ed Montague and Fulgencio Capulet.
yeah, they bring them
Paul
together.
Sorvino and Brian Dennehy.
Yeah. So I bring them together and basically like, hey, like I'm the authority here. If you guys don't stop killing each other, I'm just gonna start executing people in response. So that kind of quells things for a bit, or that brings up the tension that like, hey, we can't fight or we're gonna die. Somebody's gonna kill us if we fight. So there's that tension here. And then we're introduced. We have Paul Rudd as the douchebag Dave Paris, who's just some rich bachelor who's trying to woo Capulet's daughter. Yeah, Paul Rudd was in a bunch of things in the 90s, but you don't know him for that stuff.
Yeah, I had to take a second look. Because it was like, oh, that's a 10-year-old Paul Rudd. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he was like in one of his first movies. He was like in a Halloween sequel or something like that. And then there's also another forgotten movie he did where it's like him and Reese Witherspoon are in like a what they call that VW thing, and they're like trying to get a package back to somebody.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it real quick. Overnight delivery.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, nobody knows about that. That was one of those movies where like they threw it on like Comedy Central a bunch of times. It's like, oh, this movie's all right. Why does nobody know about this? But yeah, then he just like disappeared forever, and then he got caught up in that whole what's that crew? Like the 40-year-old virgin crew, like those people.
Oh,
Like
okay.
all those movies.
Yeah. What's that guy's name that directs all those? I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Judd Apatow. He got
caught up the Apatow comedies. Yeah.
And now he's Ant-Man, so he's made a bunch of stuff like that, and which now I think that's ending that part. So who knows what he'll do now? But yeah, it's just weird to see Paul Rudd in this movie.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know who I would expect to see in this movie, but Paul Rudd was not one of, because back at this time he was kind of more of he wasn't like a comedic actor. He was more like, I'm young and I'm trying to be a serious actor, but I'll take whatever role there is. And so he did a lot of comedy too. So
yeah, I mean, he could do like 3 days on set for his role in this.
Yeah. And then we cut to a pool hall, and hey, it's Emmett Walsh. Just
yes.
You turn your guns into him and you play pool.
Yep.
I forget what they're talking about. My notes are probably really short on this because I didn't write down dialogue, because it's like, one, it's like the famous ones you're already gonna know. Two, it's so convoluted. There's no reason to like write it down.
Yeah.
Here they're just like discussing of like, I don't even think, or is this where Romeo first shows up at the pool hall, or was it later on the beach?
No, he's in the pool hall.
Was he at the pool hall? Okay, I must have missed.
Yeah, because he's always because he's like, yeah, where were you for the fight? And he's talking about like his unrequited love, and it's like, I don't have time for the violence, and it's like he just wants to love somebody.
Oh yeah. I forgot to put. Yeah, here's a note I forgot. It says Romeo skulks on the beach in a dilapidated one-wall theater. So it's just like where the theater screen is, and everything else is torn down. It's very cool looking and weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is where like Benvolio gets dropped off by Montague, and he goes to try to like cheer up Romeo, and like he's disappointed that like his cousin was like fighting with the Capulets. Yeah, then they end up at the pool hall. Then we go to the Capulets mansion where everyone's like screaming for Juliet. So you have a mom screaming Juliet, and then you have like the nurse who's like German or something going like Juliet.
Yeah. Yeah, the nurse was a great character in the actual play too. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I might call her the maid in my notes, so might not have changed it.
Lady in waiting, nurse, maid. It's the same.
Well, I think later on, I think I looked up the credits later on. It's like, oh, her character's name is the nurse, so it's like, I'll change that. Claire Danes is Juliet. She was famous for this time for doing My So-Called Life, which I think only had like 2 seasons, but I felt like that show lasted forever. But
it was influential.
Really. yeah. So yeah, she has an interesting career where like, yeah, she had My So-Called Life. You know, she's pretty young doing that. She's young here, and then she has a really weird movie career, and then she kind of made a comeback with the Homeland series.
Yeah,
which I hear is really good, but I haven't watched it. So
I've watched 3 seasons of it, and it's like it's fine. It's actually kind of cool in a way, but it's also disturbing.
Yeah,
it's unlikable people doing unlikable things. It's one of those shows where it's like, oh, I'm kind of, these people all kind of annoy me and I'm out. But that's just my personal thing.
What was the thing with like her character is that like she gets like diagnosed with bipolar, and then like
she has bipolar disorder, and her handler at the CIA, the guy who manages her, like knows about it and is like just helping her through it. And she has to talk to therapists and stuff. But then sometimes in the series, the hook is like, oh, is she having a manic episode, or is she really onto something? I mean, she's great acting all around. Like, I forget who her handler is. You've seen him, Mandy Pacman, I think is his name, or something.
Pacquiao?
Like
no,
yeah.
No. Sorry, that's a boxer.
Yeah, I forget what the guy's name is. But anyway, yeah, she does a good job, but it's just kind of unlikably written. And the bad guy in it, it's like, okay, this guy's bad. It's just like, how? And but yeah, it's not bad.
But yeah, she's good as a Juliet, I guess. You know, she's just cute, and she does the weird Shakespearean dialogue good. So
well, other people that were supposed to play Natalie Portman, who would have been 14 at the time.
Jesus Christ.
And even the crew was like, because I think DiCaprio was 21 or 20. And they were like, yeah, too creepy, even though actually would have been closer to the original. Because I think she was 13 in the play, or it was said at some point. But see, that's back in like, that was different time.
I mean, even here, it's an arranged marriage stuff, and they get married in secret. So yeah, it's the weird stuff.
And then Sarah Michelle Gellar, was the other, but she was doing things. So DiCaprio thought that Claire Danes would be better, and also Claire Danes was 17, so it wouldn't be quite as creepy. Because Natalie Portman looks young now. I can't imagine what she looked like at 14. It's like, ugh, what are we watching?
Well, I mean, you saw her. I mean, you saw The Professional. She was like 12 in that or something.
Yeah, for some reason I can never get my head around that's Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
I watched The Professional because I like Gary Oldman's performance. It's like, oh, I love that guy. That's amazing performance by Gary Oldman.
Oh, and Jean Reno is really good in that too. So,
yeah.
You completely forget like Natalie, like the girl in Professional. She grew up to be like a really big name actor. It's like, really, which they've always talked about doing like a sequel to that, like and having Natalie Portman being like an assassin. But then that's like, but then you think about it, it's like, well, then does that defeat the purpose of the movie that she learns she doesn't want to be an assassin?
Yeah, because he was willing to train her, but she was like, at the end, she was like, I just want to go back to my mom, or I just want to go back to a family. I don't want to be involved with these lunatics killers, because it's disconcerting.
So yeah, her mom, Juliet's mom's trying to set her up with Dave Paris, and so she doesn't like that. So then we have a costume party at Sycamore Grove. Mercutio shows up in drag, and this is what's his name? Yeah, you
Harold
said it.
Perrineau.
Yeah, Harold Perrineau. Yeah, like we said, he's like famous from Oz, but yeah, he's just a great actor. He delivers this dialogue wholeheartedly and with flair.
Yeah.
And in drag. And he does it in drag too, which is also some roles where he like refers to himself as or as she and stuff like that. So then I guess I wonder if they did that backwards, where it's like this dialogue makes more sense if he's a drag or something like that. um, but yeah, there's also things are blowing up. He's like offering drugs to Romeo, and like I don't know. Yeah, you know, they're using the original dialogues. I don't know if it was their drug stuff in Romeo and Juliet other than poison.
I think it was more like libations of liquor,
okay.
and because I think that's the word he used. That's like, let me entreat you with my libations.
Yeah.
Probably, I can't remember, but it's basically, back then it would have been liquor. They probably had drugs back then. I just don't know. It was something you ground up in a mortar and pestle, and it probably like tasted like horse shit, and you threw up afterwards. But it was a great high for 15 minutes. You know,
So yeah, the gang take the drugs and they you get in a car and head to a party at the Capulets, and it kind of turns into like a drug trip music video, where you even have like Paul Sorvino in like drag or something, some sort of outfit, and they're all dancing and having them singing together.
yeah.
But then like the trip kind of snaps when Romeo like kind of snaps back to reality, and he has his head in a fountain, and he's mimicking a scene earlier where Juliet is also underwater and just staring into the camera.
Yeah. Best costuming in the movie too. That ball was amazing looking.
Yeah, because it's not like it's weird because it's not like full on cosplay of stuff or people doing like extravagant like detailed work. It's just enough like homebrew and then just enough of like good detail to be like, it's like, oh, I bet they could do that, but that's also good detail, so it looks good in the movie. Like Paul Rudd's like an astronaut or something.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, you remember, like, yeah, this is in modern times. It's like, yeah.
But then Romeo.
Oh, and the thing about the people appearing in drag, that's kind of a staple of Shakespearean acting from that era.
Well, remember all the women played by men?
Yeah, all the women were played by young men, because to express love and have like scenes with sexual overtones in public at that time was frowned upon. But if two guys were doing it, and it's like, wait, what? Okay, hold on. But that's kind of the weird, and also that people didn't think women could act back then, and there was all kinds of, it just poisons the play to have women involved. You know, it's there was.
I only know this from commercials of Shakespeare with Love, because I never actually watched Shakespeare in Love, but I know that's sort of the premise of it.
Oh yeah, that's kind of a cool movie.
I know it won Best Picture and everyone was mad.
I mean, yeah.
I think it beat out Saving Private Ryan or something like that.
Oh yeah, between those two, I'd say that probably Saving Private Ryan is one of those war movies where it's like, I hope these guys don't fight anymore, because people really get torn to shreds. Like, I don't want the good guys to fight anymore; they just get blown to pieces. It's about the only war movie that's like done that horrifyingly. I mean others have copied it since, but yeah. Anyway, Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet spot each other like through a fish tank and like kind of like
really
start flirting with each other.
Yeah, like flirting with each other while exotic fish swim by. And everyone's kind of washed out in the light. It looks it's really neat looking scene.
Well, also like their face is magnified, which I didn't understand. Like you see one side, then they cut the other side where you see Romeo's face like all like distorted and magnified. It's like, oh, that's weird. I don't know if this is like actually like the flirtation would actually work, but hey, you know, it's Romeo and Juliet.
Well, everyone's like X'd out of their minds or whatever
that's true.
they're taking. So
yeah, and she's about to be like having an arranged marriage, so you know she's looking for any way out. Then Juliet gets like whisked away and thrown to Paris for a dance. Tybalt warns, don't know. I don't know. I have this name, Fulgencio Capulet. Is that Paul Sorvino?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pronounced. It's more fluid in Italian. It's like Fulgencio, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
For our course language, it's Fulgencio.
Fulgencio. And so he warns him that Romeo's in their midst, and so Capulet gets angry. Romeo sneaks away. Juliet they like for a bit and argue about kissing, and then he like steals a kiss, but then she kisses him back when they're like in the elevator, and they're like constantly going between floors and just missing like Paris.
Yeah.
Which I don't know, like they make Paris like kind of a bad guy here, but he never actually does anything bad other than just try to woo Juliet. So I don't know if that's
he's just trying to like consummate a political marriage. Which, that's all he's doing.
But when she kisses him back, then it's like they immediately fall in love, and then the nurse steals Juliet away. And then this is where like Romeo learns that she's a Capulet, and then she learns that he's a Montague, and it's like, oh no, this will be a problem. So the Montagues grab their swords and leave. And then Tybalt promises to get retribution. Which I don't know. I guess I should say John Leguizamo in this movie is great. He just pulls off the style so well.
John Leguizamo will lean into it really hard. Whatever he's doing, he will. Even when he played that satanic clown in the Spawn movie, it's like, yeah, he just totally embraces it.
Well, he has like a weird career like resurgence right now, where he's kind of doing that thing. He's kind of doing the Nick Cage thing where it's like, I'll take any movie, I don't care, and he does a good job in like kind of like low roles. And then he's had some good dramatic roles recently. He's like in that new The Menu movie, which I hear good things about but I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
It's like Ray Fiennes in some crazy like restaurant or something.
Eat the Rich movie essentially.
And then he has like a Broadway career, like a pretty successful Broadway run right now. So it's like he's all over the place.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is definitely an interesting character.
Oh yeah.
We saw him all back in the first season of Miami Vice, or no, it was the second season. Second season.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, he's another 14-year-old.
Yeah. Romeo climbs a fence and he like tries to find his way back to Juliet. They hit like a checkpoint, and he like just jumps out of the car. But the Montagues keep driving. We have Juliet kind of like hanging out by the pool, and then like here's where we get the Romeo, we're out there for our Romeo, and he's just like hanging off the fence, and so she doesn't know he's there. There's also the cut to like a cameraman like watching video, so that's supposed to build tension. It's like, he could get caught. And then you have the nurse like running around, which we don't know if like, and I think the mom too is like, it's like nobody can know Romeo's here, so that's the whole tension of the scene. But he creepily listens behind her, and then without her knowledge, and so she just talks to herself the whole time, and like basically like declares her love for him. And he's like, cool.
Yeah. It's like throwing a fist and yes.
But then he like announces himself to her, and then like she gets scared. They both fall into the pool together. But then she hides him from the guards. Here Romeo confesses like his love for her. They kiss again. Romeo requests like a declaration of love in return, where here it's like she's kind of caught by surprise, because I think the idea was like it would be rude if he asked for sex, but really all he's asking for is like, do you love me too? And then that she was like taken from, it's like, he's really sweet.
Yeah, she was expecting one thing.
Yeah.
A conquest. Instead it turned into love.
And then here I wrote, I think she set some sort of like love message to be delivered to the next day. And so I think that happens, but I didn't understand in the moment what was going on. It's like, I will send a messenger. And I was like, oh, will the message get intercepted and this won't happen? Is this how things go wrong? But that doesn't. But anyways, it was me forgetting how Romeo and Juliet worked. So I have that being the end of Act 1. I don't even know if that, yeah. My act guessing here is going to be way off, but oh well, that's how I have
Well, there
it.
is an actual act structure, but I don't know that the movie makes it clear.
Okay. So I have Act 2. We got Pete Postlethwaite as Father Lawrence. And,
Love that actor. Died way too soon.
Yeah. He's doing some science with plants, and then and here I was like, oh yeah, we're setting up the poison. Okay. He's just talking to two kids. I don't even know who the hell they are in relation to him. They're just two kids. And then Romeo tells father about his love for Juliet, and so when he tells him that, like, we get like a shot where he's like, Father Lawrence is just like in the corner. There's like images behind him, and he's like, just he starts to imagine a world of peace happening if he can bring these two together in love. He's like,
Yes,
oh, this can bring peace.
only time this type of imagery in this way is used in the movie. It's really strange, but it does show you his motivation as a character.
Yeah. And then we have Tybalt and Cuz, Benvolio are like.
Benvolio.
Oh no, it's not Tybalt. It's Mercutio. They're doing this. Sorry, I wrote that wrong.
Yeah, it's Mercutio, Benvolio, and Balthazar, I believe.
They're just like doing guns tricks while debating.
Yep. What you do?
So yeah, they're taking like Beretta 9mm that are heavily customized, and they're just doing like kind of like Western, like spin in the gun.
Yeah, Mercutio's actually has like a clear magazine. See the bullets in it. I was always curious, how does that work? And it's like, oh, it doesn't. But
yeah. Or when the spring gets up to where the cutout is, the spring will just explode.
Yeah.
Unless they have some weird like air piston magazine.
Could be.
Yeah. None of that's important. It's whether it looks cool, and it does. So it's kind of very video game logic. It's like, does it look cool? Well, then it doesn't matter what the logic is. Well, I mean, I guess that's movies in general, anyways. But and then Romeo shows up and he tells him about that he's in love. I think that's where he. Oh no, they don't figure out the messenger shows up. It's just the nurse, and then he starts to go away with the nurse, and they're like kind of like bummed out. It's like, no, this is a betrayal in some way. I don't necessarily get that, but I don't know if you can give any weight to that, Nathan. What's going on there?
What is this again?
Romeo's like going away with the nurse because she has the message for him, like the response from Juliet, and then Mercutio and Benvolio are like upset about it.
Oh well, yeah, because they hate Capulets.
Oh, okay.
They feel like it's like you're betraying your house, you're betraying your allegiance, and
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's what I figured was going on. I didn't know if there was anything more.
Well, that and they don't want to see their friend get in trouble and or get killed.
Yeah.
And they don't want because now it's like you will be killed if you start a fight in the city. Like Captain Princess said, it's like, you know, what is it? It's like the hour we find you will be your last if this happens again, or something like that. Yeah.
But so Romeo goes with a nurse, and here she gets the message like, yeah, she returns her love, and so Romeo promises that they'll get married. And I wrote in secret, and like, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
And so this is like the nurse is like really happy. I keep for some reason, like this whole time I was keep waiting for the nurse to like betray them in some way, but she doesn't. So she's cool.
Yeah.
The nurse goes back to Juliet to give Romeo's response, and so she tells her to go to confession at Father Lawrence's church, and then that's where they'll be married in secret. And then Father Lawrence, like, and I picked these lines up mostly because of Westworld, but he says these violent delights have violent ends.
Yep,
and then
that's
Romeo
where it comes
Juliet
from. Westworld quote. That's why Shakespeare was a genius. 500 years later, the pretentious writers of a overhyped sci-fi series are like, let's quote Shakespeare. And let's play Nine Inch Nails song on a player piano, and that'll make up for the fact that this story like just winds in circles and never ends. These violent delights have violent ends. Yes, I got it. That's what they teach you at Harvard. I kind of like Westworld. I'm just fucking around.
I mean, more bad seasons than good. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
First season was amazing.
Yeah.
That,
Well, this last season, like, I don't like I think it was like the first 3 episodes, like, oh man, I think we're going somewhere, and then by the end, it's like, oh shit, you went nowhere.
Here comes a parachute, and then the next thing that happened was like canceled. Well, we'll never get to wrap this up. I mean, the Earth could last 100 million more years. How long can we tell this? Don't stop now. Don't be a quitter.
Yeah, so I felt nothing when they canceled Westworld. It's like, I guess good, because they're not turning this around.
Yeah. Yeah, this ship has done crashed into the iceberg.
And again, that's probably, I'm not smart enough to understand their great, themes and deep meaning, but
me, you, and like everyone else, apparently.
Well, apparently Warner Brothers went ahead and did that thing with Westworld where they kicked it off its streaming service. I don't know if it's forever or if they're going to sell it to another streaming thing, but that's super weird because that was a huge show.
Yeah, I don't
start
understand.
Chucking that into the tax credit bin and burning all versions of Westworld.
Well, I sometimes I wonder, we might, because we do a show about TV and movies, and we might be doing, in a couple of years, we might be like, yeah, movies, they had like 120-year run, and then now they're gone. They don't make them anymore. It's weird. I can't believe it.
So then we have Mercutio is like playing and shooting his gun in the ocean.
Yeah.
What you do.
Yeah.
It's a sword, so Tybalt and his gang show up and they confront Mercutio and his gang. Here's what they have the line, "Thou art a villain," declares Tybalt to Romeo, and he demands a duel, but Romeo offers a handshake instead. Because like Romeo's like, well, I just married like one of your family. It's like, this is gonna bring about peace. And of course Tybalt's like pissed off about that. It's like, no, that's not how this works. I need my vengeance.
Remember his line from earlier in the movie, "Peace, I hate the word."
Tybalt just keeps beating Romeo, and Romeo refuses to fight back, and then Mercutio starts to fight back in his stead. But then Mercutio gets stabbed, weirdly with a piece of glass, because they don't actually have daggers or swords in this. That's all guns. Yeah. So here it's just a piece of glass. Mercutio is like laughing it off for a moment, but then he's like realizes like, oh no, I'm dying. Here he says, "A plague on both your houses," which I thought that line was a pox on both your houses, but is that a thing?
No,
also?
it's a plague.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what's the pox line? Is that something, or just me remembering something different?
I mean, that's been used also, I'm sure. But yeah, that's I always remember a plague.
Okay.
So
either
one works.
Yeah.
One's more specific.
Yeah. I like pox better because there's an X in it.
Yeah, we don't get to use X a lot in English. So.
I always like that trope in sci-fi movies where just words start having more like W's, Y's, X's, and Z's in it, because it's like, well, we already used the other end of the alphabet too much, so we got to start using this end.
Yeah.
So yeah, it says a plague on both your houses, and then a storm rolls in, and then Mercutio dies on the beach, and it's sad. Then we cut to Juliet like daydreams of Romeo. Then we cut to Romeo is chasing Tybalt. So this is, or not Tybalt. I keep writing that wrong. He's chasing, he's chasing Tybalt. Yeah,
Tybalt.
So he's, I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's getting revenge, but then he does. Well, first he has Tybalt's like holding a gun, and he like Romeo grabs the gun and pulls the gun to his head and basically dares him to kill him. He doesn't, and then Romeo gets the gun and then just shoots Tybalt dead into a fountain with his rapier 9mm.
Yeah, with his own gun.
Yeah. Um, and then Captain Prince shows up to dispense justice. Miss Capulet demands like Romeo's death. And then Captain Prince like banishes Romeo from the city. To which Romeo is really like bummed out about it. It's like there's no recovery from this. I'm banished. He hides out at Father Lawrence's place. The nurse shows up to tell him that Juliet's crying about in his absence. Like she won't stop crying. And then but Father convinces Romeo to like keep pursuing Juliet. So then Romeo sneaks away to Juliet. Here's where they presumably have sex. It's pretty heavily implied.
It is. They do.
They get naked at least.
Yeah.
You know, hugging naked.
That's basically sex.
Yeah. There's the morning after. We have like the magical bedsheet scene where it's like a really, I mean, it's a well shot like scene. Like I don't think, because they keep having like this bedsheet over them. And they're looking into the camera, and it's like such a weird, interesting way to shoot a like kind of a love scene, or a post-coital scene or whatever. So, Juliet's mom interrupts. Romeo's like hurrying to put his clothes on, so he gets out of there. Juliet just has like a bad omen about like as Romeo leaves. It's like basically it's like she starts to see him drown. And it's like, oh no, he's gonna die and I'm gonna die too. It's like, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Even though everybody knows what's gonna happen. So I don't know. Do you think somebody who knew nothing about Romeo and Juliet saw this movie and was just amazed by it? It's like, I never saw that coming.
Shakespeare is such a cultural touchstone in the English speaking world. I would be amazed. Not only if you saw this would you have to understand English, but you would have to be able to follow along with this type of English, which is a very structured, stilted way of speaking.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would doubt that somebody had not heard of this before the movie. It's possible, maybe. But I mean, you learn about Shakespeare in like grade school.
Yeah.
Like they start immediately. And there's a reason you do, because everything written in English after this follows Shakespeare's rules. And if it doesn't, it's considered either, ooh, this is quirky and different, or terrible. So it's like that. Yeah.
And if you don't pick it up in school, you're going to pick it up through cultural osmosis anyways. But
yeah, well, English and history are the only classes I paid attention to in school. So. It's like if you said, hey, Nathan, do you think there's anyone who's never heard of algebra or couldn't do it that would be amazed by it? And I'll be like, yeah, me. It's like, yeah, that's possible.
We have Juliet's informed of like an arranged marriage with Paris between her and him. And so she gets mad about that. Mom and dad are mad. Everyone is mad about this. And then Paris just has like a bag of roses. It's like they're like, come back tomorrow. He's like, oh, okay. So, Juliet meets Paris at the church. He leaves, and then she's like putting a gun. Oh yeah. Paris leaves, and then she grabs a gun and puts it to her head, like in front of Father Lawrence. And then she starts pointing the gun at Father Lawrence and crying. It's a very heavy scene.
Oh yeah.
And then here's where Father Lawrence gives the plan, like they're gonna fake her death, and then she's gonna escape her marriage to Paris, and then she'll be able to run away with Romeo. And so Juliet has the sleeping poison vial thing. She speaks with her mother, and then after her mother leaves, she takes the poison and passes out. And the next scene, she's like declared dead. They have a funeral, and then Balthazar witnesses the funeral, and then he goes to go tell Romeo. And so he tells Romeo. Romeo is overcome with emotion, and he plans on killing himself, and he takes off for Verona because he's like hiding out in Mexico. So good thing they shot it in Mexico. He's already there.
Yep.
I think I forgot to point something out here. They have a point where like a messenger like leaves something on like the mobile home he's hanging out in or whatever.
Yes, and the delivery service is called Post Haste.
Yeah.
Post office.
Which is brilliant. Somebody should actually do that. I saw some weird delivery service today. Like they weren't like it wasn't like your standard major carriers. It was some delivery service.
Sunshine delivery or something.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
like going 75 on ice filled roads. So they were getting their money.
Yep. Earning every penny.
So I have that being the end of Act 2, which is probably wrong because I have 6 notes for Act 3. So here we go, Act 3. So yeah, Romeo misses the message from Father Lawrence explaining the situation. So Romeo goes and gets poisoned from Emmett Walsh at the pool hall.
Yeah.
Captain Prince is giving chase. Romeo takes like somebody hostage and then like is shooting at the helicopter sniper.
Yeah.
And then Romeo happens to take shelter at the church where Juliet's body is. So it's great. So he's where he needs to be. This place is lit really cool. They got like neon crosses and there's candles all over the place. Like,
yeah, it's very punk rock.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Juliet's body's like laying on a bed, just like got a funeral bed.
It's just lying in state.
Yeah. And then Romeo talks to her unconscious body, and then she wakes up just in time for him to take the poison, and he starts dying immediately.
Yeah.
She like kisses him on the lips, but like it's not necessarily because like oh, we're in love. It's more like, give me some of that poison. I want to die too. But there's not enough poison left to kill her. And so Romeo dies, and so she grabs Romeo's sword and swords herself in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie, you probably can't show this movie in high schools anymore.
No, probably not.
Then we have kind of like a montage of Romeo and Juliet being together. It's like to show you, it's like, oh, like what a waste. Then like the whole town gathers around to see Romeo and Juliet's dead bodies being taken away, and to hear Captain Prince is like yelling at everybody, and he's like, all are punished, which I don't know how to spell, and neither does Google. Because it's like punished with a couple extra EDs on it. And that's the end of the movie.
Yep, that's
which what's the sequel? Because because like you have Father Lawrence's dream being like, well, if we put them together, peace will be, we're gonna put these families together and peace will happen. Do you think after the events of this, where it was a tragedy where these 2 young lovers die, do you think peace becomes out of tragedy, or do you think it's just more strife?
Well, based on human history, I would say more strife.
Okay.
Maybe a different form. I don't know. Maybe the two fathers could reconcile, but I don't know. Like, yeah, it's like in that time, like divisions of power were corrected by marriages and stuff, but sometimes the merging of power created greater enemies who felt more threatened. So it's one of those things where it's like, but this is a romance. This is a tragedy with tragic romance. So you'd hope maybe the characters would learn.
Well, that's always a fun thing with Romeo and Juliet, is because they talk about, it's like, oh, what a love story, and then people just intentionally forget the end of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah,
it's
like a romantic romp.
Yeah,
during the time of strife and violence, it's like, until 2 teenagers kill themselves, and then everyone's like, hey, this world we've created is kind of screwed up. Well, back to killing. But Captain Prince does say in his dialogue at the end, it was, let me look it up. It's actually kind of cool. I think they did a shortened version of this movie, or this in the movie. It's like, a glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence, to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, some shall be punished. For never was there a story more of woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. Those are basically the last words of the play.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, so it does indicate that like maybe we should talk about these sad things amongst ourselves. You know, because it's so sad the sun won't come out, which is just, you know, artistic. Or based on an eclipse, who knows? But yeah. You'd like to think that like some wisdom came from this.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is these violent delights just to have fun in it.
I do love that. That's the last line before they're declared married.
Yep. If I had known about that before I got married, I would have I was like, we got to throw this in. Or I did know about it, but I don't think I could get that past the wife. Like, what kind of weird, stupid shit are you wanting? No, dude, no, this is not one of your like, you know, sinecures of humor. That like, what does it mean? Why are they quoting that? Nobody would think that was funny, or they jump to conclusions.
But this was a really flashy, cool movie that's also just kind of awkward. So
yeah, and I think intentionally. I don't think there was any like, oh wow, we get this out of it, but it was totally like from bad direction or bad acting or bad writing. It's like, no, it's meant to be kind of awkward young men doing stupid things.
Or
like shooting at each other in the middle of the
yeah, well, yeah, I think like when I saw it and like they had the weird like they were shooting at each other and like they called the guns daggers and swords and stuff. I thought that was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool because I think I never watched this movie before, because I thought it was just like a teenage romance movie. So I thought this was more for girls. It's like it wasn't going to be for me because it was just going to be some weird rom-com where they kill each other at the end.
Yeah.
But no, it's really kind of a movie. Well, it's not really. It's a movie for nobody and everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's an anachronistic movie that would never be made again this way, from a certain time and place. You know, in American history, a time of kind of like optimism and like, hey, we're exploring new things. We're edgy. You know, we're gonna do punk rock. or Romeo and Juliet, which it was not punk rock, but because it was punk rock, like Juliet would have her nipples pierced, and it would just be really.
Like the soundtrack for this movie was huge. Like it sold like some like 6 million copies or something like that.
Well, remember that song I used to like to play back in the day when we could do that before, you know, you couldn't play any songs of the Radiohead, the talk show host song.
Oh yeah.
This is where I heard that. This is why I like that song, because of this movie. And
weirdly, on the DVD, there's a commentary from Baz Luhrmann. And there's two separate commentaries from the two separate music producers on this movie.
Huh, okay.
I don't know why, but apparently like, and even like when I went to the library, this is in the musical section, which I wouldn't necessarily consider this a musical, but
yeah, I mean, we have the Mercutio scene with Harold Perrineau, but that's that's more like you can see like what that he did Moulin Rouge soon after this.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh, he likes these kind of scenes and this kind of acting and stuff.
But like there was an interesting thing. I forget, there's a song that's like "Oh Verona," which they did for this movie, where it has like an Italian choir, like no.
Well,
like
let's not forget the choir, the youth choir in the church in the middle of the movie was singing "When Doves Cry" as a choral thing. I don't remember it until I watched it recently, so it doesn't really like. I guess it didn't really stand out as like, oh, you got to watch this movie because this element, but it was kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
But you know, like this is 1996, like it wasn't anachronistic. That song wasn't anachronistic back then, like it would be now. Kind of like, oh yeah, this is from way back in the 80s, you know, before the Earth was born, you know, that time.
But you know that opening thing where like they're showing like the pictures of like the strife and stuff like that. And it's like
yeah.
Boom, so I forget what it's based on. Anyways, apparently it's not old enough where like you'd still have to pay money for that thing. So they did their own version of it, And so it's actually the version from this movie that other people pay for rather than that other one because it's
Nice.
cheaper.
That'll show them. That'll show them.
So that Overona song is like in commercials and other movies, like just all over the place because it's cheaper in the license.
But yeah, this is a good movie, a good snapshot of what the world was like in America in the 1990s and the kind of movies they were making. Again, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I mean, my favorite Shakespeare movie is Titus, just because of Anthony Hopkins' performance and the weirdness. Because that play is terrible to read. Like, you would not want to sit down and read and or just listen to the dialogue of that like you would some Shakespeare plays.
Yeah.
But that still stands out as my favorite, just because I think Julie Taymor directed it too.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird and cool at the same time.
Oh yeah, like the production value on that is like crazy good because that's what Julie Taymor does. Is like that's her thing. Like I never saw any of her plays, but her movies always look fantastic. I don't never really like them, but they look great.
I love Titus. I really, but only based on Anthony Hopkins and the other people's performance and just the way it looks. Yeah. It's not actually a fun, but there's like fun about that movie. It's just, it's cool to watch.
I mean, like on the director filmography, he has a bunch of like shorts and like music videos he did, but like his 6 movies, he has Strictly Ballroom, which is like an Australian ballroom dancing movie, which I've never seen. Have you seen that, Nathan?
No.
Okay.
I've seen everything else on that list.
But he did Moulin Rouge in 2001. Then he did Australia, which was the movie where like, let's get all the big Australian actors and we're going to tell the history of Australia. I remember that bombing, but I actually don't know how well or bad
it's vaguely cool. It's like fun to watch. I learned things about Australia I didn't know. The Baz Luhrmann and Nick Cave are the only. I've learned a lot about the history of Australia from those two, and nobody else. So, because I actually thought the Road Warrior was like a real thing that happened in Australia. I knew so little about their history. Like, wow, that's a weird place. Kangaroos and people fighting on the roads. But it turns out that wasn't true. That was also a 9-year-old me thinking. So.
They have a okay, there it is. Sorry, Internet Movie Database has a weird thing now where they section off like because like a director will also have like 400 other different roles. Well, he's also an executive producer here, and sometimes I'm like I click the director thing and what that does will actually remove the director section from it so you can look at less. It's like that's not what I meant to do. So he does Australia in 2008, and then he does The Great Gatsby in 2013. So it's him and Leo back together. Which I never saw that.
It's a cool movie.
Okay,
it's a better book. Read The Great Gatsby is not a long book to read,
no.
And it's cool. It's really cool, actually.
Then he did some TV, and then Elvis. That was his latest movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. So I don't think it's in wide release. But
I think it's streaming now. I don't know where, but I believe it's streaming somewhere. So
okay.
But yeah, sir, a 30-year film career. He's got 6, and for a name he's only got 6 films to his name.
Yeah, well, he does interesting stuff. It doesn't look like anything else you've seen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's definitely there's a lot of like fast. Like it's fast motion, but it's what do you call that?
Fast cut.
Well, also fast cut, but it's like when the motion like moves like too fast, where it's like
sped
up and stuff like that.
Sped up, yeah.
They do a lot of that stuff in this movie. It's very goofy, but like the style in this movie is all style. So
yeah, it's awkward and style.
They do it. Do you remember any slow motion in this movie?
No, I remember a lot of long scenes, like camera pullaways, but
okay,
not slow motion.
I'm trying to remember like the there's that part when John Leguizamo like kind of jumps in the air and shoots the gun, and I'm like, was that slow motion, or was that just kind of awkward, or was that just kind of style?
I think there seemed to be a lot of like 3 versions of the same scene all smashed together.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta get out at 9. So
all right. Well, that's Romeo and Juliet. So if you like what you heard and how couldn't you can find us at verhoeveneffect.com, or you can go to Anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect. You can rate our podcast whatever you want, but remember, the highest rating is the only thing the algorithm listens to. You control the algorithm doesn't control you. You can go at verhoeveneffect.com. We have listener support. You can support us at 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect for as long as that's still a thing, or sold off to some weird person, other weird person. You can find us at Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us at American Greed Factory on YouTube at American Greed Factory. You can watch both this show and that show live and unedited. And you can find t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/greed factory. So for Verhoeven Effect Podcast, I'm Colin.